All right, welcome back to Breakfast Television. We're all getting ready across Canada for Remembrance Day. We're all wearing our poppies with pride. And it is no different over at Maclean's magazine. James Cowan, the managing editor there, is joining us to talk about this fantastic issue that pays tribute to the fallen soldiers. James, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so Maclean's is going to be honoring, and this is a very specific number, 66,349 Canadians who died in World War I. Let's talk first and foremost about that number. How is it possible to even get that number?
Well, it was actually an interesting challenge that we thought when we went into this project and wanted to put the name of a soldier who sacrificed their life during the war on the cover of our magazine, that it would be settled history, that it would be easy to find a complete list. And what's interesting is even 100 years later, the list and the number of soldiers killed in the battles is still changing. We're still learning new names. They're still finding soldiers in battlefields over in France. And so it took a little bit of work to actually figure out exactly what number that we were going to use to represent how many soldiers were killed in combat. We ultimately settled with this number that came from Veterans Affairs, and we think it's a fairly broad number that represents both soldiers who died during the battle and then died in a number of years from their wounds after the actual war ended.
Let's talk also about the fact that that number is attached to the number of issues, and you were talking about that, you touched on that briefly, associated with the name +1 for the unknown soldier. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, we thought that going back 100 years, we start to talk about big numbers and we talk about big battles, but it's very hard to build a personal connection with something that happened 100 years ago. And we thought the best way to do that would be to give each reader who got one of these issues an individual name of a individual that was fought and died in combat. And so each of the covers that has been sent out across the country, the 66,349 plus the one for the unknown soldier, has a different name on it. And so that gives you a first point of connection. And then if you go to our website, there's a database where you can look up the name that appears on your cover and learn more about them and see their attestation papers and see where they're from, who their parents were, all of that kind of information. It's a really evocative and personal connection you can build with the past.
And in some cases so young, in many cases so young. We also just saw going by on our screens a little earlier something fantastic that's in this issue. You do these then and now photos. Take us through that.
Yeah, photo illustrator Peter McDermott does these wonderful illustrations where he'll show a picture that is largely the present day. So you'll see Buckingham Palace with the tourists swarming around and doing what normally happens at Buckingham Palace today. But in the center of the photo, he's included a piece of archival footage. So you see a Canadian lieutenant in a wheelchair being wheeled away from Buckingham Palace 100 years ago. And it creates, once again, a real feeling of a connection between the past and the present, spreading all across both Canada and Europe.
And James, I have to ask you, you did say it's very hard to sort of feel a connection in some cases to something that did happen so long ago. I'm sure it must have been an emotional process for you and your team to put this together. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
It certainly was. The sense of getting to know these people and not just as numbers or names in a history book really was a moving experience, and you start to really feel a personal connection. And not only that, but you also start to see things like the postcards that were sent back and forth between a mother and her son on the front, or letters that went back and forth, and you start to realize the enormity of not just what the soldiers and the people involved in the fight directly felt, but also the people on the home front and the amount of angst and trauma that was caused as a result of this conflict.
Well, James Cowan, the article, the issue, excuse me, is fantastic, 66,349. And again, you said that number could be even higher. Canadians affected who died in World War I. The issue is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for putting it together for us and really taking us back and letting us feel that connection to the sacrifice that was made. Again, fantastic. This is the latest issue of Maclean's magazine. James Cowan, managing editor at Maclean's magazine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, again, that issue is available. It is absolutely fantastic. I do recommend that you go and check it out and feel that connection, lest we forget. All right, stay tuned. You're watching BT.